Alright, so now what we're going to do is put in our hill on that left side that we painted in our blocking. So we're going to look at our photos. We have one that we like. That nice hill on that side has got a nice little rock shoreline as well, so we can use that to our advantage here. Going to import it in. Yeah, just that hill right there works really well with our painting, with our blocking. So the way you map this out is we go into our channels and we look at the red, green, and blue. And we're looking for the highest contrast in the darks to the lights. Usually ends up being the blue channel. So we duplicate that channel. We go into our curves. And now we want to create a high contrast matte. So we pick the picker there. We're going to pick a light value on that hill because that's the element we want to matte out. We're going to try to get it as close to black as possible. Then we pick the light values and we lift that up into our curve to try to get it as white as possible. And another light value there that we're going to pick up because we want to lift all the light values out so it's easily matteable. So come close. There's still some values in there. Now instead of going there and doing with the curve tool, what I like to use is the dodge and burn tool. Now I'm going to set that to my midtones to burn the midtones, and your exposure is the strength of this thing. So we have all these little values. We're going to pick our burn tool, burning the midtones, and I'm just going to go over this to burn it in. It's just going to darken that out, turn it to black. Now this is only affecting, the midtones. It's not going to hit. It's not going to turn that white in the background there any darker. So this is great for hardening up some of those edges, because a lot of the times our edges will will be a gradient, and we'll pick up some of that sky color behind it or something. But this way I could go over the edges and just darken up those 1 pixel edges and burn them in to get that nice matte, real crispy matte. Now this works too because a lot of information in this photo. We shot this. I shot this at Laguna Beach, so this is a nice high res. A lot of information in this file, so this is going to be a lot cleaner than some of the other elements we're going to use. But again, you see me switch to dodge, and I'm going to dodge the light values too to create a nice crispy matte here. Just going over again, killing a lot of those grays, because we don't want any grays. We want a nice black and white. I'm not too worried about that size. I'm just going to take a brush with the black and just paint it in. We're probably going to paint that out anyway, but just to create that area. So we invert that selection because the white pixels, and we control select that, and we copy paste it. So now we have a nice matte, and we're going to select what we want from that matte. We don't want the rest of it. We only want to bring in that section. Copy it and paste it in. I'm going to flip it so it's on that side, and you can see we got a nice little matte out of that. Now the bottom part is dirty, but we're going to paint all that out anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. As long as the edges of the tree line and the rocks are nice and crisp or somewhat clean, I think we're in good shape. And you can see too that I organized and grouped my sky and my beach into folders. That makes it easy to take a look at the PSD in case I need to move it. You're noticing that I'm moving the sky now because it was a little off our horizon line. So that just makes it easy. We move everything in one, and it's easy to find stuff. So it's good to stay organized in your PSDs. So now we're going to use a hard brush to just paint out anything that's left over from that sky. And we're using hard brush because we don't want any pen pressure sensitivity on the opacity. We want it to be nice and crisp to delete any remaining pixels from the sky, because we did put the sky on top of our beach because we wanted a nice seamless blend. Now I'm going in there and trying to blend that sky back into the horizon so it's nice and soft. We don't want a hard edge there. It's a foggy day. Just checking our beach layers again. Just gonna paint out that dark beach. We don't need it, so we're gonna use the layer underneath it for that water back there. Going back to our element, creating a clipping mask here because we're going to start painting out the rocks. And you notice I grabbed a hard brush this time because I don't want any pixels remaining from transparency or opacity from pen pressure. I want nice hard matte out here. And once we get a line, we can use a soft brush to kind of soften it so it's not so hard. But right now I'm just looking for a nice shape from this thing, especially near the shoreline here. We don't want that to be soft, we want it to be hard, so that's why I switched to the hard brush too. It's got to be a nice hard edge on that shoreline. Just take out what we don't need. Make sure you paint everything out. You don't want any remaining fragments around. That's why I picked a nice hard brush, big. Just paint out anything left. Just gonna clean that shoreline up. See how that's fitting on our beach. Might need to take out some more. Again, judge where you want that beach to kind of blend in into the water, into the sand. That's starting to feel good. You skew that so it's, you know, it looks like it's going away from us in perspective and kind of doing that point into the focal area that we painted in our block-in. And that's the importance of the block-in, is that, you know, we had all these ideas drawn down. It may not have been perfect in the exact same spot, but we knew that we wanted that shoreline to point to our focal point. That's why we do the block-in. So I'm going to color correct it on the clipping mask because we're most likely going to go back and forth with this element to match it. So we want that ability to adjust. Just pulling down the lights because we don't want the lights to be too bright. Again, we want this element to be dark, so we want to pull down the midtones. Create another curve. This is going to be for our color. Just looking at it, see what we want to do, plan for it. We want to pull out the reds first. That's another thing. Take a look at the element first before, you know, you jump in there to see what exactly you want to do, and you're not just aimlessly color correcting. And now I noticed that the reds were really, that was really red for what I wanted. So I'm going to pull it out of the darks there. Again, it's that fill light, the sky lighting this thing, and I want that nice blue palette. So I'm going to pull out the reds in the fill here. Now, of course, it's a little green, so I'm going to select a dark area with my picker, so it's going to show me where that point is on my graph, and I'm just going to use my arrows to nudge it up in that area to create this nice, cool fill here. It's looking a little too bluish, so I want to bring back a little bit of that red, because again, you don't want to lose the local color too much, but you just want to tone it down because it's being influenced by the sky a lot. So I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Help it sit in there. Again, we're taking a look at our reference too for the exposure of this element. We're not just aimlessly color correcting here. We kind of have an idea and a plan. So here's some things I'm going to probably have to paint out because we don't want this thing to look like it came from Laguna Beach with flags and, you know, benches and stuff. And even the palm trees in this element I don't want to use because it's too pristine. We want that overgrown feel, and we're going to stylize the bark and the shapes of these things like we did in our block-in. So I'm going to paint this out. Just get rid of all this stuff, and we're not worried about, you know, the edges right now and making it look like, you know, the shrubs are pointing out. We'll do that. We'll get to that a little bit later. We just want to get rid of some of this stuff and create like a shape. We want the shape of this thing to work as well. I'm gonna paint this stuff out. We don't need that, and that plant is just too whack for what we want. It's not the type of vegetation we want in the scene. I'm gonna clean this up to get a nice round edge, like kind of like we painted in our block-in. So I'm going to look for the form too of this rock. I'm not just going to cut into it. I want to look where the form is and kind of paint that out. So I want to get rid of that lookout thing there. This shouldn't look like it's been habited by human beings. Take a look at it, see what else we can do to the shape of this thing. We'll get rid of this stuff too. We won't need it. We'll replace it with all our own custom shaped palms and trees and shrubs and all that good stuff. But for now, we're going to get rid of it and focus on our shape. Make sure our shape is working, our silhouette. I'm going to get rid of those benches there. I don't want any signs of that stuff. Again, judging the shape of this, the silhouette of this element. And just going to rework it until I get it to what I want. And I've done this in real time too, so you guys can see exactly how these elements get integrated once they're brought in here. And so we're going to be doing these techniques for a lot of the different elements, so it's good to kind of take time and see what's going on. I didn't like the shape of this thing, so I'm just going to redo it. And that's the magic of clipping masks. We can go back and forth. Really helpful. We're not just erasing, because we're not going to get back those pixels back if we just erase. Just trying to get this shape to read a little bit better. Yep, starting to work a little better. I like that. You know, zoom out, take a look at it from far. Don't always zoom in, so that's where you're going to see a lot of your mistakes. Notice that there's some transparency in that beach there because of our soft brush. Just going to go in there and just see where it's coming from. It's obviously our top layer here with the sand. Going to fix some of this transparency stuff. Sometimes when you use a nice soft brush, you're gonna paint too much and you won't be able to see it until later. But that's no problem. We just paint back in our clipping mask here. Paint it back in. All good. Make sure everything's looking right. We notice this guy in the plate, so we're gonna have to get rid of this guy too. But I just want to see how much I can integrate and soften it. Maybe sand, goes up. A little softer integration. We don't want a harsh line all the way through. Again, that same idea of not having super harsh lines going through your painting, unless there's a need for it and a reason for it. In this one, because we have nice sand kind of going up to this element, we can paint with a soft brush here. Maybe bring back some of our hill here. So I'm going to see if I can bring back a little bit more of that plate to help the integration a little bit more, because it was lying on sand in the element too, and whenever you can use more of the element, the better. So if that that element is fading into sand, I'll bring back some of it so that the transition is natural. And that's what we're looking for, because it casts shadows, the ambient occlusion and stuff like that you might have in the element. We can bring back. I want to see if I can use a little bit more of a textured brush to get to break up that softness of that sand. We don't want it to be too soft. Maybe this texture in the brush is going to help us integrate this element a little bit better. I'm just going to use the clone brush, the clone tool here on that element. You see I selected current layer, so it's not sampling all layers. And I'm just going to paint it out really quickly. You don't want anyone, no humans on this beach. Alright, that's looking good. Step Step back, take a look at it, see if it's working. Yeah, take a look at it. Make sure all the elements are jiving together. I notice that we need to distort this a little bit. Create that angle a little bit more. Make it look like it's going away from us in perspective. It's not just, straight on. So I might fudge with this a little bit. See if we can get something to work. Checking some of our sky layers. See if we can fix the integration of that thing. I wasn't happy with it. Maybe bring back some of the clouds in the bottom of that element to create kind of almost like a ceiling, to create more depth. I felt like I was losing depth in that sky. I'm just gonna darken it down a little bit. Feels like it's a little bit too light, and it was blending too much. Let's grade it down a little bit. I'm gonna play with this element. I'm gonna integrate this a little better. Check to see what that element is again, just to remind yourself. See if we can get a better integration to the clouds above with the structure. Again, on that left-hand side, it's probably gonna be blocked by that background mountain, but it's good to just stay clean, just in case it peeks its head somewhere. Play with the grade a little bit. Make sure it's fitting in nicely. Take a look at it, see if there's anything that stands out to us. Just gonna add a new layer here. See if we can just sample some of that color and just fade that horizon line. Look, I was talking about just ease in the horizon line to the water. It's a foggy day, so we're not gonna have a nice clear horizon line. It's gonna be really, really foggy back there, and just knock it back and help the two elements integrate as well. It's gonna help us out. And we put that layer on lighten to see if we can get. When you put it on lighten mode, what it will do is any value that's darker than what's underneath it, it's gonna take out and keep the rest of it. And I noticed that I didn't want to do that because it was too stark of a contrast. I'm going to put it in normal and just work with the eraser here and blend it in. Just tone it down a little bit too. We don't want to lose that bright spot too much, but we do want to kind of create this horizon fog to knock that stuff back. We still want to maintain that light spot to pop our ships back, so I think we kind of get a good mix here of that dark to break up that harsh horizon line that we had before, and blend the elements of the sky and the ocean, the water, together. I think this is starting to feel good. I'm happy with that element. Let's see if we can make some changes here, but I think we're good for this step, just to bring that in to kind of integrate a little bit. Let's take a look at it. See if we need to make some changes. I think I'm happy with it for now. We're going to maybe make some changes a little bit later, but we're good for now. Save it, and let's jump to the next step.